Joyce Green is a current Charleston County School Board member representing the East Cooper area on the board, but after 4 years, she's not seeking re-election. I speak exclusively with Joyce for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Joyce Green, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's so good to see you.
Likewise. Obviously, you are the Charleston County School Board member for the East Cooper area. And I know that obviously you're not going to be returning to the Charleston County School Board as you'll be stepping down in November after serving for 4 years. Tell me, who is Joyce Green now as board member?
Joyce Green now, as far as much more enlightened about Charleston County school system, much more worried about meeting the needs of our kids, much more want to stay involved in some way, because what I found, what I learned, I think I said this before, I don't have the academic background, so I went on the board for reasons related to how could we make the board function better as a board. My issues had to do with the governance of the board and to see if we could, if we operated like we should, then could we get more accomplished for the kids? Because at the end of the day, it's not about adults, it's about the children. Or the students, and so those were my issues, and so I can't say that the first couple of years I think we were making some progress. There were quite a few things that we did that as a board, we got a lot of criticism behind it. As you probably well know, since you were from here, Charlestonians don't like change, and we didn't always go about, it was like understanding change needed to happen, but there's a way to make change happen. You got to educate people. You got to let them know what you're doing. You can't let them think that you're making these decisions in a vacuum and not getting out to the public. And so I think that we could have done a better job in some of the efforts that we made. But back to your original question, I'm just going to probably be education focused now going forward in some way. I have no interest in running for the school board again, but I will do some volunteer work and see what things that I may be able to help affect some change for especially the brown and black kids of Charleston County.
Now, Ms. Joyce, you said this obviously when you talk about the past, when you actually first began on the school board as a bad board member. My tongue was twisted today, but you said those decisions that were basically just happened inside a vacuum, if you will. What were those decisions that were made in that particular vacuum? And how are they affecting the kids, the decisions of schools and those kids right now?
Well, what we were trying to do, Quintin, when I first got on the board, what we were trying to do was expand the availability for less privileged kids to go to some of the privileged schools that we like the Buste and that kind of thing. So we were trying to increase the number of brown and black students that that were able to qualify to go into those schools. So we did, and all the details I probably can't explain, but we made some changes so that the entrance, the admittance criteria would not be as stringent, so that other families could, if they wanted to, apply for and have an opportunity for some of the kids to get in. And that was one of the things that there were several. I mean, it was like Buste.
Right.
There were some issues in West Ashley where we had two schools, and one was considered a white school and one was considered a black school. And it's my understanding that a bus would take the black kids right by the school that was designated as more white kids, and then take them to another school. And we were trying to balance all of that. So there were several different efforts going on at one time. And my point is, we did get some information out to the community, but obviously we had a lot of pushback on it. We were able to implement a lot of it, but there was some pushback, and it made me stop and think in terms of the business of the school board, how important it is to be able to try to garner and maintain the trust of the community. You don't have every parent that is interested in what's going on in the school system. But you have enough parents that want to know what's going on. And I think that the district has an obligation whenever there are changes made, regardless to how minor. I don't know that I agreed with this before I went on the board. I just thought, okay, if we're trying to do great things, let's just get in there and do it. But that's not how it works. You really, really have to keep your constituents, your parents engaged, because, and that is the right thing to do. I see it now. I don't have children in school, but I see the need for parents to always know that whatever efforts the board is taking or the district is taking, that they may not agree with them, but at least if we try to communicate to them what we're doing and why, and have dialogue about it, we get the benefit of their input and they understand what it is we're trying to do.
Well, let me ask you this, Ms. Joyce. Do many of the parents and really the teachers, do they actually trust you all on the Charleston County School Board?
I don't think so. I think when I say that, I would say if I was answering the question of the major people in the county, I would probably say not. I mean, there are lots of things that I heard over the 4 years. One being, when we hold our meetings, because we hold meetings in the afternoon, and a lot of them say, well, we can't get to the meetings. The meetings are live streamed, and but if you work, it may not be the right time. I mean, for me, it wasn't always the right time. I mean, because we have somewhat of a set schedule, but sometimes the meetings started at 1:00. But that's just one example. And the other is, I think sometimes things happen and we as a board wanted to react so quickly that we didn't take the time to maybe do the best job we could with communicating. And and it may not be anything that you're doing wrong, but I think it's just human nature. If people don't understand what you're doing, the trust level is just not going to be there. And, I heard that, and I hear that from school boards around the country. I think that it's always going to be somewhat of a factor, but I think in Charleston County, it could be improved.
Ms. Joyce, let me ask you, you talk about the school board and how they actually communicate and whatnot. Do you believe that the school district per se has been transparent with students and teachers?
Oh, Quintin, that's a toughie, because and the reason I say that, I'm sure if I was talking to the superintendent and some of his direct reports, they would say yes. And I do believe that there is not an effort to deceive or be deceptive to students and parents and teachers about what's going on. However, there are lots of moving parts that the board does not get involved in. I just know that I would get questions from parents about things that I had no clue. I mean, they would be things that would not rise to the level of the board. I mean, with us looking at the governance issues. And so I would always try to make sure they got an answer to their question, but it ended up going back to somebody in the district to answer the question. So, I would venture to say that for the most part, my thoughts about the people in the district office, I think for the most part, their hearts are in the right place. It is a bureaucracy like you can't imagine. I mean, with the number of employees and the number of students and trying to get your arms around all of that. I mean, it takes some people with some skills, and I think that we have some good staff, but I think we have some people. I mean, just personally, I think sometimes you can wear out your welcome. I just think for any of us, if we do something too long, and I'm talking about year after year after year, you lose the momentum of the creativity for bringing in fresh ideas, fresh thoughts. And in a school district like Charleston, I just think that it would be helpful if we had more meshing of maybe bringing on new people, with some of the people that we have in the district. So, I mean, to answer your question, I do believe that the effort, and I don't think people really want to be deceptive. I think the members of the superintendent's cabinet want to have a good relationship with parents and teachers, and I think they listen to them. But to say that things don't fall through the cracks, I can't sit here and say that.
Okay, but Joyce, let me ask you this, then. Okay, what departments and services within the Charleston County School District need some new people with fresh ideas?
I don't know that I want to put that out there, Quintin. I do have some ideas about that, and but I think it would be too pointed. And during my 4 years, we did bring in some new people. There was an effort to look at some diversity issues, and so there were people, both contractual and employees, that came in to look at some of those issues. We wanted to look at the issue around students being better prepared to, when they graduate, to go out in the world and either go to college or get a job. And so those kinds of initiatives we were able to start on. But what happened during the middle of my 4 year was COVID, of course. And so I know we probably are over our time, but
oh no, you good.
Doing some of the things that we initially set out to do, I think we could have accomplished more had COVID not interrupted the school year for 2 years. And I know we blame a lot on COVID, but the impact of COVID is much greater than people may realize. And of course, the impact is felt, have been seen more in our brown and black kids. And so we've got a lot of work to do to try to kids that were already not at grade level, and then you had that to happen. And so they've fallen farther behind. And I know everybody in the district knows that. And I do believe that they are working very diligently to try to figure out ways, like with summer school and
Oh, yes.
tutoring and
Sure.
that kind of stuff,
Sure.
to be able to offer those students that need it the opportunity that they can catch up and be and be able to perform at grade level.
And I'm so sorry for the distraction. There's a big dog that literally is running behind me a few minutes ago.
I didn't see him.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. But let me ask you, okay, so where is the achievement gap right now between minority students and non-minority students in your district?
In my particular district, I can't tell you, Quintin, I don't have those numbers, but in Mount Pleasant, the first thing I would say, which caught me by surprise, is the population, the Black population in Mount Pleasant is so low until we have, in each school there's not a great number of students in, brown and Black kids in schools, but Mount Pleasant schools are considered the best in the county.
Sure.
And everybody, and that's pretty much all of the Mount Pleasant schools.
Right.
And so when I hear other districts say, well, why does Mount Pleasant have this and we don't have this? There are a lot of things that go into that question that I was able to understand in terms of the number of kids at the school,
Right.
in terms of parent involvement at the school. So there are a lot of factors that play into the school and the quality of the education. I don't know that particular statistic for the Mount Pleasant schools, but I would venture to say that the Mount Pleasant schools for white kids and non-white kids, I think is pretty high.
So let me ask you this, Ms. Joyce. And I know, as you mentioned, the population is very low for African Americans in Mount Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
So where is that, African American population shifting? And where do you see what is the school district? What is the school district going to do about that?
And that's a good question, because I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think that people, as I understand it, Mount Pleasant used to have quite a high number of African Americans or Blacks in Mount Pleasant, and the best I can figure is a lot of them have moved out, because for a few reasons. One of which is if they lived in the area called the Old Village, where a lot of them used to live, the taxes have become so high that a lot of them have sold their properties and moved further west, Goose Creek, Monk's Corner,
Right.
that kind of thing, just because I think that is a factor. I think that there were in some homes that I understand, people that own homes left and went to upstate, kept the homes.
Right.
They have no plans of coming back here. And now with real estate values being so high in Mount Pleasant, if you don't have any interest in moving back, I guess people just sell their property. It get bulldozed. I see so many houses being bulldozed, and these big houses being.
Yeah.
So I would think that is part of the reason, but I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going to happen with, when you think about the population growth in Mount Pleasant, it is unbelievable. But in that is not a lot of brown and Black kids. It's people moving here. The traffic is so horrendous over here, and so when you go into a school, you'll see a few. And so I don't know if brown and Black people are just not moving to Mount Pleasant. People are moving to the Charleston area, as you well know.
Right.
And I think this is just an educated guess. I think that people will move here from the north. If they have kids, they will move to Mount Pleasant because of the schools in Mount Pleasant.
Mm. So what is the current population, the student population for African American students in your district?
What I know right off the top of my head is the African American population for Mount Pleasant is around 3%.
Okay. Wow.
And we have there's one school in Owendaw. It's an elementary school that is it's predominantly black. And then of course, you know, Lincoln existed and they closed Lincoln. So that is the only predominantly black school in District. Well, Mount Pleasant is composed of District 1 and District 2.
Right.
And that is the only school in District 1. It's St. James Santee.
Right.
It's a great school,
yes,
but it's pretty much the community that around St. James Santee.
Right.
So I don't know what the answer to that is, Quintin.
Now, those kids who were at Lincoln obviously moved over to Wando. So how's that working out?
You know, it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, there were, I think, something like the graduating class, and this happened before I came on the board.
Right.
I think there were, like, from my understanding, maybe 70, somewhere around 70 seniors.
Wow.
And my understanding is that they're doing okay. Now, the parents, I mean, okay academically.
Right.
The parents still, and that community still feels like they should have their own high school.
Mm.
And so the district, it's my understanding that there's this group of people that feel they were promised a school when Lincoln closed. So we have purchased property on 17, not very far from St. James Santee, for a middle high school. The problem that the district will be presented with, you try not to do a new school, and I don't know where the number comes from, for less than like 500 students, because with 500 students, you can get so many more privileges. I mean, the number of teachers and all of that depends on the number of kids in the school. So, of course, there aren't enough students in the McClellanville, Owendaw neighborhoods to justify the 500. So what the district is looking at is probably drawing some lines so that North Mount Pleasant kids, would be, and you and I both know that's going to create havoc. I mean, we know that is going to create havoc. But the other thing, I think they want to do something creative. And the other thing that have been thrown around is to make the school like a magnet school where kids would want to go because we are offering things at that school that they can't get anywhere else in the district. And I think that's a good way to think about it. In terms of trying to build a school that the kids can get. The local people feel like they have a community school, but that we aren't still struggling with what these kids have access to as compared to the other schools.
So what would they offer there if the school district, that is, would build it?
What you mean? What kind of courses?
Oh yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I should have said that.
Well, I mean, for it to be recognized as an accredited school, there would have to be your regular courses.
Right.
But I mean, for instance, they could do something like, say, let's just take academic magnet for instance, and put an academic magnet in Mount Pleasant. Sure. You know what I'm saying? The curriculum, the concept, the school for the arts. I mean, something along those lines, and do that in Mount Pleasant to attract kids that live on this side. And you would probably not have a problem getting the numbers that you needed to be able to make the school successful.
Wow. I know I have probably 15, well, probably 12 minutes left, but let me ask you, because I know you talked about it earlier in this particular interview, and that is about board governance. Let me go to this because I know that the board is reportedly proposing to basically delegate the majority of its policy decisions to the superintendent. Let me ask you, Ms. Joyce, what best practices can come out of all of this?
Well, first of all, that was not really the intent. Okay, so the intent behind that was not to delegate it all to the superintendent. The statute lays out pretty clearly what the requirements are, what the responsibilities of school board members are. And what we found is we found ourselves reviewing and developing policy at the board level that really had more to do with operation than governance. So what we wanted to do, and the whole concept was to take that pile of policies that we have and try to recategorize them. Now, if it's a policy, it has to come to the board. That is something that the board has to do. So the board can't delegate that responsibility. What the board could do, it could look at all the policies that we have and say, well, this pretty much is being handled by the superintendent anyways, so why bring this to the board? So it was never an effort for the board delegating responsibilities to more responsibilities or more of their responsibilities, but looking at it, I guess, from the perspective of shared responsibilities and looking at the set of policies that we have now, because there are quite a lot of them, and some of them govern things like, discipline. Well, we have a process for discipline. If something happens to a kid, if they are expelled or suspended, that comes to the board. That would never be delegated to the superintendent. I mean, the board is supposed to be somewhat, isolated from the day-to-day operation.
Sure.
So in my mind, now I don't know what will actually happen with this, but when it came up, in my mind, what I was thinking and what I was in agreement with is a review of the policies to decide which of those policies are really governing policies and which of them could be taken care of with operation, not necessarily in the form of a policy, but just like, you have your handbooks for different things. Could this be something that we would look at and say, well, this could be handled through something else other than a policy? And the whole process, Quintin, was to try to read the effort that the school board has been working on in the last couple months is so that we as a board would be able to spend 80 or more % of our time talking about student outcomes, talking about what we can do to enhance the experience for the students. Right now, we spend a bunch of time talking about a bunch of things because a lot of it is not even anything in writing, but just because things started coming to the board for approval and they continued. So I think it was to look at the policies and see, if there's a way we could eliminate some of that from coming to the board so that the board would be able to spend more time with things that are really important, and that's the students. And I don't know that we've ever done that. And so much of, okay, so the 4 years I was on the board, the first 2 years I was there, then we had an election and we ended up with 5 new members.
Right.
And then now everybody is going off the board and we're going to have a whole new board.
Sure.
And I cringe every time I think about what could happen. We didn't get a lot accomplished, but we did. I think we had a direction that we were going in, and I just hope that the incoming board will first and foremost spend most of their time dealing with student issues. That would be my wish.
Well, then, Ms. Joyce, why didn't you all just let the new school board come up with this new board governance?
Well, And I agree with you on that. I
Okay.
mean, it wasn't a decision. We had started working on it kind of toward the end of last year.
Okay.
And just to be honest with you,
Yes, ma'am.
there was a strong proponent of, I guess the majority of the board felt like we needed to get it in place. And maybe if we had it in place, it would be easier to follow than waiting on a new board to come in, try to figure out what they needed to do, and then try to start something. Because I think the whole governance thing is something that every board needs. And I'm not saying that, I don't agree with some of the things we are trying to do right now, when we know we've got a new board coming in. Because, I mean, a lot of the work that we have done, they could come in and say, we don't want you passing along anything to us. We want to figure it out for ourselves. You hope that, and that's not with this board, but with any board, you hope that things that are adopted, policies, practices, make so much sense that somebody coming in new would think, oh, well, this makes sense and we need to continue doing that. I can't say that that's going to happen, but that's what, that's what you hope for.
Okay. Let me ask you, so what things are coming, what things are not in writing right now that are currently coming to the school board that you all have to really discuss and figure out?
Okay, let me think if I can come up with something. I'm drawing a blank on. We deal with a lot of personnel actions. Well, the superintendent has the authority to hire and fire. I think there is something, and I don't know if this is in writing or not, but there's something that says that the board has to approve positions at a certain level. We don't get involved with salaries.
Right.
We don't review the applications or any of that, but it comes to the board. I think there is something to be, when I first went on the board, I thought the superintendent should have that authority. We don't need that. Let him or her hire who they want. But I've seen that play out, and I do believe that there could be some checks and balances about bringing those things to the board, but it needs tweaking, because don't bring me a recommendation without me having any knowledge about the person. I mean, you asking me to, I mean, it's basically like, well, if this is who you want to hire and it is the final authority rests with me, then at least give me the opportunity to vet the person, to look at the person, to see who the applicants were, that kind of thing. Because I don't know necessarily if I'm approving something, without looking at all of the information. So, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure what is in writing about that, but it's stuff like that. It's stuff like, I'm trying to draw a blank. It's so much that we get on an agenda, and you look at it and you'll say, why? I would always say, not everybody, why are we approving this? And I think the whole thing about the governance thing is to clarify a lot of that, and to also say these things could be handled by the administration, and these things need to come to the board. So I think a lot of that is just the clarification.
And I have 3 minutes left. Jarita Polstoway, she's no longer the Charleston County School Superintendent, as you know. She's now the Superintendent in Lexington 1. So let me ask you, Ms. Joyce, if she is good enough for Lexington 1, then why did you all give her $500,000 to walk away?
It's a personnel issue that I can't really discuss. I mean, that sounds simple. Like, the best thing I could say is, there were probably not a meeting of the minds between the superintendent and the board members. That's about all I can say about
Okay.
that.
Now, you all created a consultant position for Dr. Postlewaite after she was let go, and I know that you voted to try to to bring back Dr. Erica Taylor, I should say. So why did you all create a consultant position for Dr. Erica Taylor as well?
Again, that's a personnel issue, and the only thing I can say to you, in all honesty,
yes, ma'am.
and I've never been dishonest with you, Quintin.
Oh yeah, of course
is
not.
that we, as a board, at least, I can't say that every board member didn't know about it. Me, as a board member, was not aware of it until it happened. The board was not consulted on that. That termination, that is one of the things that has bothered me in terms of how that happened, because, again, the superintendent has a right to have those people around him, but there's a way to do everything. And Erica was just, so well positioned in the county with the school district. Sure. And that was a question that I also had to the superintendent. Why couldn't we have reassigned her into another position or something along those lines? And, I don't remember his exact response, but he elected not to do that. But I was not privy to the decisions that were made regarding Erica's employment.
So, speaking of that, Donald Kennedy, would you recommend him if you wanted to go back on the school board and if you were to be elected? Would you keep him as a permanent superintendent?
Probably not. I have a lot of respect for Don. Don was the chief financial officer. And I chair the audit and finance committee, and I just held him in very high esteem. He was, I found him to be, he knew his finance stuff. I do believe, with all of my heart, that his heart is in the right place. I do believe that a lot of what he's trying to do to improve the education for kids in Charleston County are spot on. I think my concern with him and what I've seen over these last several months has a lot to do with people that he have put around him. Wow. And how he has elected to deal with personnel actions. And so that's a Joyce. I'm an HR person.
Yes.
That's a Joyce. That's not saying that I can tell him who to hire, who not to hire. Some of the hires and some of the personnel actions and the way they were made, I just would take exception to. But I want to give him credit for some of the stuff that he is doing that I think, it's going to prove to be very beneficial to the district.
Joyce Green, thank you for your time here on Quintin's Post Ups again.